The January sun had yet to rise over the horizon when Randall Duque Black began his day, just as he had for the past 30 years. At 55, he was an imposing figure against the Texas dawn, standing 6 feet 2 inches, with a weathered face and calloused hands from decades of hard work. The oil industry had made him rich, yet out here, on his vast ranch on the outskirts of Austin, none of that seemed to matter. You build everything you think you want, the ranch, the business, the reputation, Duque would later say, his voice heavy with regret. But one day, you wake up and realize that success doesn't keep you warm at night. The year 2016 had just begun, and his sprawling 4,000-acre ranch was already showing signs of prosperity. His investments in oil technology had yielded impressive returns, and his cattle operations were thriving. But behind the grand walls of his luxurious country home, Duque's world had grown emptier with each passing year since his wife's death 3 years ago. Mr. Black was always the first to wake up and the last to leave, recalled James, a longtime ranch hand. He worked harder than any of us, but there was something in his eyes, a loneliness, especially at night when everyone else went home to their families. Each evening, after his workers had left and the ranch had fallen silent, Duque would retreat to his study, a room filled with testaments to his success. Photographs of oil fields, industry awards, and family pictures that felt like relics of a different life. His daughter, Madison, had urged him countless times to go out more, to meet someone new. But in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, that seemed impossible. Then came that fateful January night. As Duque mindlessly scrolled through his social media feed, an advertisement caught his eye. Find your perfect match in Latin America. Maybe it was the bourbon. Or maybe it was the weight of another lonely night. But something compelled him to click. The profile that would change everything appeared almost instantly. Isabella Torres, 24, Monterrey, Mexico. Her photos showed a stunning young woman with olive skin and dark eyes that seemed to pierce through the screen. One picture had her posing in front of a high-end boutique. Her profile described her as a successful entrepreneur looking for a mature companion. Your ranch looks incredible, her first message read. I've always dreamed of visiting Texas. Duque hesitated, his cursor hovering over the reply button. In the dim glow of his study, he had no way of knowing that this simple message would set him on a path with no return. That the warmth he craved so desperately would turn into something far more sinister. There were so many warning signs, Madison would later tell investigators, her voice breaking. But Dad, he just wanted to believe that someone could love him again. And that made him the perfect target. As Duque typed his response, the clock on his study wall struck midnight. Outside, the Texas wind howled across the empty ranch, as if trying to warn him of the nightmare that was about to begin. What started as casual messages soon evolved into something more. Duque found himself constantly checking his phone, eager for Isabella's replies. There was something about the way she expressed herself, how she made him feel understood, appreciated, and most dangerously of all, young again. Their late-night conversations moved effortlessly from her boutique business to Duque's oil investments, from shared dreams to intimate confessions. Life in Monterrey can be lonely, Isabella wrote one night. Running a business at my age, people don't take me seriously. But you understand that, don't you, Duque? What it's like to build something from nothing. Her words struck a chord. Duque did understand. And with every message, the difference in their ages seemed to matter less and less. Isabella's stories were masterfully woven. She spoke of struggling against Mexico's conservative business culture, of her dreams to expand her boutique to Texas, and of her desire to find a partner who matched her ambition. Every tale was sprinkled with just enough detail to feel real. What Duque didn't know was that every word had been carefully designed to pull him deeper into a web he wouldn't escape. She was careful to avoid being verified, always sending photos of her boutique from angles that concealed its location and speaking of clients whose names were never mentioned. Their first video call came 3 weeks into their relationship. The connection was poor, the lighting dim, and Isabella blamed Monterey's unreliable internet infrastructure. Despite the technical difficulties, Duque was captivated. She looked exactly like her photos. However, there was something different in her eyes. When he mentioned this to his son, Travis, the response was immediate and harsh. "Dad, seriously? A 24-year-old boutique owner who can barely manage a decent video call but claims to run a successful business? Wake up." Travis stormed out of the weekly family dinner, leaving Duque defensive and irritated. Madison took a softer approach. "Dad, we're just worried. Remember what happened to Richard from church? He met someone online from Colombia, and they drained his bank account." Duque dismissed their concerns with a wave of his hand. "Isabella is different," he insisted. "She doesn't need my money, she has her own business." But Isabella was skilled at her craft. Whenever Duque's family raised doubts, she had already prepared him with a counter-narrative. "My parents were the same," she confided in one of their late-night calls. "They never believed I could succeed on my own. Sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones who doubt us the most." Duque found comfort in their shared experiences of being misunderstood. The photos kept coming: Isabella at a cafe, in her boutique, at a local festival. Duque saved every one of them, never noticing that she was never seen interacting with friends or family, that the backgrounds were always generic enough to be anywhere in Latin America. Then she sent a photo holding a custom-made sign that read, "Missing my Texas cowboy." His heart melted, ignoring the small voice in his head that wondered why the sign looked suspiciously digitally added. Their relationship deepened in calculated phases. Isabella started calling him "my love," shared intimate details about her day, and even cried during a video call over a supposedly failed business deal. Duque felt needed, protective, and alive in a way he hadn't since his wife's passing. His ranch workers exchanged concerned glances when they saw him smiling at his phone during work hours, but they kept their worries to themselves. "I've never felt this way about anyone," Isabella told him 2 months into their online romance. "But sometimes, I worry, maybe the age difference bothers you." Duque rushed to reassure her, unaware that he was following a script perfectly designed to make him reaffirm his commitment even more. The wall of his study, once covered with family photos, was now filled with printed screenshots of their conversations and pictures of Isabella. His daughter, Madison, visited less often, unable to watch her father sink deeper into what she was certain was a trap. But Duque was beyond her reach, lost in a digital romance that seemed to offer everything he had been missing. He couldn't see that every message, every call, every photo was another thread in a carefully woven web around him. A web that would soon close in, with devastating consequences. 3 months into their online romance, Isabella's voice trembled during their nightly video call. "Duque, my love, I can't keep pretending these calls are enough. I need to see you, touch your face, know this is real." Her words made Duque's heart race. He had been thinking the same thing for weeks but hadn't dared to suggest it. "Come to Monterey," she continued, her image flickering in the dim light of her supposed bedroom. "My boutique is hosting a charity fashion show next week. It's the perfect time." Duque didn't hesitate. "I'll be there," he promised, already planning the trip in his mind. Isabella's smile widened, but it never quite reached her eyes. The next morning, Duque threw himself into preparations with the same determination that had built his oil empire. He booked a room in the most luxurious hotel in Monterey. But Isabella insisted he cancel it. "Stay at my guest house," she urged. "It's more private, more romantic." When Duque mentioned the change to Madison over their morning coffee, her cup froze midway to her lips. "A guest house? Dad, you haven't even seen this place. What if it's not real?" But Duque was already at the mall, selecting gifts he believed would impress a woman much younger than him. A Cartier watch worth more than most people's monthly salaries, exclusive perfumes, designer handbags. Duque's heart pounded against his ribs, each step echoing through the dimly lit corridor. He clenched his fists, his mind racing through every red flag he'd ignored. Isabella, the boutique, the perfectly timed messages, it had all been a carefully orchestrated illusion. Miguel led him into a large room with a single hanging bulb casting harsh shadows against the cracked concrete walls. A metal table sat in the center, flanked by 2 chairs. On one side sat a man in a suit, his sharp features betraying no emotion. "Senor Black," the man greeted, his voice smooth yet commanding. "Please, have a seat." Duque remained standing, his instincts screaming at him to get out. "Where's Isabella?" The man smirked. "Ah, Isabella. She sends her regards. But I believe it's time we discuss business." A door creaked open behind him, and 2 more men entered. One carried a briefcase, the other, a pistol tucked visibly into his belt. Duque swallowed hard. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not interested. I'm leaving." Miguel stepped forward, blocking the exit. "I'm afraid it's not that simple, senor." The suited man gestured to the briefcase, and his associate placed it on the table, flicking it open. Inside, neatly stacked bundles of US dollars gleamed under the dim light. 100,000, the man said. A gesture of goodwill. "We need someone with your expertise, your connections. Work with us, and this is just the beginning." Duque let out a humorless chuckle. "You lured me here for a job interview? You could have just sent a damn email." The man's smile faded. "You misunderstand, Senor Black. This is not an offer, it's a necessity. You have resources we need. Declining is not an option." The air grew heavier, thick with unspoken threats. Duque glanced around, calculating his odds. The pistol, Miguel's bulk, the men lingering near the entrance, it was a trap, and he was caught in its jaws. "And if I say no?" he asked, voice steady despite the growing dread. The man leaned forward, folding his hands. "Then, senor, you may never see Texas again." A chill ran down Duque's spine. His family had been right all along. But now, with every escape route blocked and the weight of his choices crushing down on him, he realized the truth too late. Isabella had never been real. Only the trap was. Duque felt like just another brick in the construction of his future with Isabella. Travis made one last attempt to intervene, showing up unannounced at the ranch. "I did some digging," he said, spreading printed documents on Duque's kitchen table. "There's no boutique registered under the name Isabella Torres in Monterrey. The address she gave you doesn't exist." Duque's face hardened. "Son, I know you mean well, but I'm not some senile old man being deceived. I've had video calls with her. I've seen her business." The night before his departure, Duque hosted what he hoped would be a celebratory family dinner. Instead, it felt more like a funeral. Madison barely touched her food, and Travis sat in stony silence. Only his youngest daughter, Sarah, attempted to keep things light, asking about Isabella's boutique, to which Duque responded with rehearsed enthusiasm. "Just share your location with us, keep your phone on, and if anything seems off, anything at all, promise you'll come straight home," Madison urged. Duque agreed, more to calm them than out of any real concern. After all, he had survived the cutthroat world of Texas oil. How dangerous could a boutique owner be? That night, as he packed his suitcase, he paused before a framed photo of his late wife. "I think you'd like her, Mari," he whispered. "She has your spirit." The irony of those words would later haunt him. His suitcase was a testimony to hope and vulnerability, expensive gifts, his best suits, daily medications, and printed maps of Monterrey with Isabella's supposed locations marked. In his wallet, he kept 5,000 pesos in cash, just in case, even though he had already sent Isabella money for what she called fashion show preparations. At dawn, just before leaving, Duque took a final look at his ranch. The Texas morning sky blazed in shades of orange and red, a warning from nature he was too blinded by love to notice. His phone vibrated with a message from Isabella. "Safe travels, my love. Soon, you'll be in my arms." Smiling, he locked the door and climbed into his truck, unaware that each mile toward Monterey was a step deeper into a meticulously laid trap. The Texas highway stretched endlessly before Duque as he drove south toward Laredo. 6 hours on the road, with each mile marker passing to the rhythm of his racing heart. He had made this trip countless times for business, but never with such anticipation. Never with such purpose. At a rest stop, his phone lit up with a new selfie from Isabella, supposedly taken inside her boutique. "Just finishing up preparations for your arrival, my love." By the time he reached San Antonio, the March sun was beating down relentlessly. His phone buzzed constantly, messages from his children interwoven with updates from Isabella. Madison's text was concise: "Share your location." Travis sent articles about travel advisories for Mexico. Sarah simply wrote, "I love you, Dad. Be safe." Duque replied with reassuring words but lingered only on Isabella's messages. As he neared Laredo, a flicker of unease took root. Isabella's messages had shifted subtly. "Small change of plans, my love. There were plumbing issues at the fashion show venue, so we moved it to a private estate." Before Duque could ask for more details, another message arrived. "Don't worry about the hotel. My driver, Miguel, will meet you at the border crossing. He knows where to take you." The Laredo border crossing was a stark transition. The familiar Texas landscape disappeared, replaced by the chaotic bustle of Nuevo Laredo. Duque's truck inched forward in the slow-moving line, his grip tightening on the wheel. As soon as he crossed, his phone buzzed again. "Miguel is in a silver Escalade. He'll be wearing a red cap. Trust him, my love." Duque pulled into a gas station, scanning the lot. Within minutes, the Escalade appeared, driven by a man whose broad smile seemed permanently fixed. "Senor Black," the man greeted. "Isabella sends her apologies. She is very busy with last-minute preparations." Following the Escalade through the industrial outskirts of Monterey, Duque noticed the surroundings, rows of abandoned warehouses and shuttered factories. This wasn't the lively city center Isabella had described, with its boutiques and cafes. "Are you sure this is the right way?" he asked, calling the number Isabella had given him. Miguel nodded. "Yes, senor. Isabella's new venue is very exclusive. Very private." As the sun dipped below the horizon, they turned onto a dirt road, leaving behind the city lights. Duque's phone signal weakened, his GPS struggling to update. One final message from Isabella made it through. "Almost there, my love. Can't wait to finally hold you. Red heart." Something about the wording felt different, almost mechanical. Miguel's Escalade kicked up dust as they drove deeper into the industrial complex. Barbed wire fences lined the road. Duque's instincts, honed by years in the ruthless oil business, screamed at him to turn back. But the thought of Isabella, of their plans, propelled him forward. Finally, they arrived at a walled compound. A heavy metal gate, freshly painted over years of rust, loomed before them. Miguel gestured for Duque to park beside several other vehicles, all with American plates. "Isabella is waiting inside, senor. Please, follow me." As he stepped out, the thick night air smelled of diesel, and something sharper, chemical. In the dim light, Duque noticed movement. Men lurking in the shadows, hands tucked beneath jackets despite the warm night. Miguel's smile remained, but now it resembled a predator's grin. The metal gate slammed shut behind them with the finality of a prison door locking into place. And in that moment, standing in the growing darkness of a Mexican industrial complex, far from the glamorous boutique he had imagined, Duque finally understood what his family had seen all along. But by then, it was too late. He was about to become another statistic, another cautionary tale about the dangers of online romance. The FBI office in Austin buzzed with activity as Special Agent Diana Reyes spread dozens of files across the conference room table. Duke Black was not the first case, he was just the latest victim in a pattern they had been tracking for months. 6 American men had disappeared in Monterey under similar circumstances, all lured by mysterious young women from dating sites. The profile is always the same, Reyes explained to Black's children. Successful men over 50, usually widowed or divorced. The scammers study their victims for months, crafting the perfect bait. She projected Isabella's profile onto the screen, now just a digital ghost. They build elaborate stories, create fake businesses, entire fictitious lives. Madison's hands trembled as she unlocked her father's laptop. The FBI's cybersecurity team worked quickly, unraveling months of communication. Isabella's messages revealed meticulous manipulation, every response calculated, every photo shared strategically. The images of the supposed boutique Duke had received were traced back to various stores across Latin America, digitally edited to remove identifiable details. "Look at this," Travis pointed to a thread of messages. Every time Dad mentioned visiting her, she made up an emergency, a cancelled fashion show, a family crisis, a business problem. They were buying time, building trust, until he was completely trapped. The pattern was clinical, precise, a well-oiled machine designed to separate vulnerable men from their money. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, the tracker Sarah had placed in Duke's wallet. Dismissed by the kidnappers as a simple accessory, it was still transmitting. Agent Reyes coordinated with Mexican authorities, but the response was unsettling. The local police seemed reluctant to investigate certain areas of Monterrey's industrial sector. "We've identified the woman behind Isabella," Reyes revealed, pinning a surveillance photo on the board. "Carmen Valdez. She's linked to at least 12 similar scams in Mexico, but she's protected, connected to the Nuevo Leon cartel through her brother." Crime scene photos from previous cases made Madison rush out of the room, overwhelmed by the images of what her father might be enduring. As the investigation progressed, an even more sinister pattern emerged. The cartel wasn't just running romance scams, they were using these traps to identify wealthy targets for kidnapping and extortion. Bank records showed ransom amounts following the same pattern, always demanded in cryptocurrency, always following the same theatrical script of love turned into a nightmare. "The complex where they're keeping your father," Agent Reyes pointed to satellite images, "has been on our radar." Previous victims described identical details, the silver Escalade, the man in the red cap, the industrial location. But by the time authorities arrived, it was always empty. Travis obsessively studied the layout of the complex. "The cartel moves their victims through a network of these buildings," he pointed out. His experience in the oil industry helped him understand the industrial terrain. They use abandoned factories, places with multiple escape routes. A joint task force was formed, FBI, DEA, Mexican Federal Police, and Special Operations Units. The balance was delicate, move too slow, and Duke could become another statistic, move too fast, and the cartel might eliminate him. Each hour revealed new evidence of the operation's sophistication. "They're not just opportunistic criminals," Reyes explained. "They're running a business. Every victim is researched, every scenario planned. The woman in the video calls isn't even Carmen," she added. "They use younger girls for the calls, always in dim lighting, always with weak connections to hide the deception." Sarah discovered previous scam attempts in Duke's emails, other Isabellas, who had tried to lure him over the years without success. The cartel cast wide nets, waiting patiently for moments of vulnerability. Duke's grief over his wife's death had made him the perfect target. The team worked tirelessly, coordinating with the few Mexican authorities they could trust. Carmen's operation had grown too ambitious, too greedy. Previous victims had paid silently, broken by shame and fear. But the Black family's persistence, combined with Sarah's tracker, had given them something they had never had before, a real-time location and a chance to catch the scammers in the act. As Agent Reyes finalized the rescue plan, a message arrived from one of her contacts in Mexico. Carmen plans to move Duke in the next 24 hours. The window for action was closing fast. Night cloaked Monterrey's industrial sector like a heavy shroud. Inside the complex, Duke drifted between consciousness and darkness, his face swollen from the kidnapper's latest attempt at persuasion. The tension among the captors grew with every passing hour without a ransom payment. Through the haze of pain, Duke heard urgent voices and hurried footsteps. "Move him tonight," Carmen ordered. "The feds are asking too many questions." The words chilled Duke's battered body. Being moved meant one of two things, freedom or a shallow grave. And he had heard enough to know which was more likely. The task force mobilized under the cover of darkness. Mexican special forces led the charge, with FBI tactical teams providing support. Sarah's tracker had given them something invaluable, certainty. They knew exactly which building Duke was in, eliminating the need to search the entire complex. Carmen was in the middle of another threatening call with Madison when the first explosions rocked the compound. Flashbang grenades shattered through windows as assault teams stormed in from multiple entrances. The kidnappers responded instantly and violently. Gunfire echoed between the concrete walls. Duke heard the chaos erupt above his windowless cell. Every explosion was a reminder that salvation was near. Then, his door burst open. Carmen appeared, wild-eyed, gun in hand. "You're still worth something," she growled, yanking him forward. But years of working on ranches and oil fields had forged in Duke a resilience his captors had underestimated. With a sharp movement, he threw his weight back, sending both of them crashing against the wall. When the rescue team entered, they found Carmen unconscious on the floor, Duke barely conscious, surrounded by armed men calling his name. "FBI, Mr. Black. You're safe now." The words reached him from a distance, just before darkness finally claimed him. Madison's phone rang at 3:47 a.m. "We got him," Agent Reyes said firmly. "He's alive." The Black siblings collapsed into each other's arms, tears flowing freely. Their father was coming home. Duke spent 2 weeks in a Monterrey hospital before he was stable enough to return to Texas. His physical wounds would heal, but the psychological scars ran deeper. The man who returned to the ranch was different, more cautious, quieter, haunted by the memories of those 4 days in hell. Carmen's organization collapsed quickly. The raid provided evidence that led to dozens of arrests in Mexico and the U.S. The seized hard drives contained information on hundreds of potential victims, men who had been studied and manipulated but had not yet been trapped. The investigation uncovered a network of professional scammers, hackers, and cartel hitmen, all working together to exploit human loneliness. Duke testified against them from Austin, surrounded by his family, as he recounted his ordeal via video link. Carmen Valdez and her court team received long sentences in a Mexican federal prison. The case became a turning point, prompting greater cooperation between U.S. and Mexican authorities in investigating romance frauds. A year later, Duke stood before a room full of law enforcement officials and victim advocates. His voice was steady as he shared his story, no longer burdened by shame. "Loneliness makes us vulnerable," he said. "But looking for love shouldn't be a death sentence." Dating sites implemented new security measures, though everyone knew scammers would find new ways to prey on the vulnerable. Back on the ranch, Duke found healing in routine and family. His children visited more often, and Sunday family dinners became sacred again. The wall of his study, once covered with Isabella's photos, was now adorned with pictures of his grandchildren. He had lost his fortune, but he had gained something far more valuable, a second chance at life and a deeper appreciation for the love that had always been there. Sarah framed the tracker she had placed in his wallet, a reminder that sometimes, the smallest acts of love and foresight can mean the difference between life and death. the Texas sun still rose every morning over Duke's ranch. But now, he no longer watched it alone. His story became a warning for others, a testament to both human vulnerability and resilience. In the end, Duke Black found what he had been searching for all along. Not in the false promises of a digital romance, but in the unwavering love of the family that had always been there.